Pope Francis will soon be walking the streets that Jesus walked. Tonight, we'll take you to Bethlehem, where Christians are preparing for his arrival.
We discuss the UN's Committee on Torture releasing its report on clergy sex abuse. Ukraine's voters pick a president this weekend in the midst of violent clashes. Can the new leader bring peace? And preparing Arlington National Cemetery for the Memorial Day weekend. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Friday, May 23rd, 2014. Good evening from Washington, D.C. I'm Brian Patrick. Welcome to EWTN News Nightly. This weekend, the Holy Father travels to the Holy Land. This is a historic trip. It'll be packed with state visits and outreach to religious leaders, refugees, and the poor. Tonight, our Alan Holdren is with our News Nightly team in Jerusalem, where everything's getting ready for the arrival of Pope Francis. Alan, tell us how they're preparing there, please.
Well, we went just down the road from Jerusalem today to Bethlehem, and this is only five miles down the road. Pope Francis will be there on Sunday, celebrating Mass with the local Christians there in the central square. We went there today to speak with the residents and officials ahead of the trip.
Bethlehem, the place of Christ's birth, preparing the way for Pope Francis. The stage is set. It will soon be an altar. The Vatican flag flies alongside the Palestinian one. Politics, of course, are not absent. This is where the Pope will be celebrating Mass on Sunday.
Many of them are waiting, are expecting to live in peace. And most of all, also, they're expecting something that maybe the Pope cannot give.
According to Father Mario, they want jobs and more freedom. Verses of the Quran play in the streets. Today, 9 out of 10 of the town's residents are Muslim. Still, Christians remain the city's backbone. Local Catholic leaders call them the leaven of society.
We are a small number, but we count in the society because of our schools, 2 universities in the diocese, more than 12 hospitals, many social activities that we have. We count more than our percentage. Someone said, you are 2%, but you count for 20%.
Though just 25,000 people call Bethlehem home, it has a direct link with Rome. The town's Catholic mayor has already met the Pope twice. Now she'll be welcoming him to her city.
I ask him to utter clearly that we need to live in justice. We need to be included. He said himself, Pope Francis, we need to work to restore hope and to include the excluded.
Brian, the mayor there has an extraordinary story. She's actually the first ever woman mayor of Bethlehem, and she's got 5 children. She's so excited about the Pope coming into town this weekend, and she actually got emotional during our interview. We'll have much more for you from Bethlehem later in the program. Back to you, Brian.
All right, thanks, Alan. The first stop on the Pope's tour this weekend is the Jordanian capital of Amman. The Pope will meet Jordan's King Abdullah II and Queen Rania during his visit and celebrate Mass with thousands of Catholics there. He's expected to be warmly greeted by Jordanians with huge street billboards that have already been erected in that capital city. Meanwhile, the Pope has entrusted his pilgrimage to the Holy Land to Our Lady. Today he visited the Basilica of St. Mary Major this morning, praying before the Madonna Salus Populi. This video is from the visit that he made to that same church and that icon right after his election. We are honored now to have Ambassador Ron Dermer, Israel's ambassador to the United States, with us. Ambassador Dermer, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
You grew up here in America, didn't you?
That's right, in Miami Beach, and we have a very strong Catholic community there, and I grew up playing basketball at St. Patrick's Gym on Miami Beach. So I'm thrilled to be here when Pope Francis is making, I think, a historic visit to Israel. We're very, very thrilled to have him in Israel.
What does it mean to you and other Israelis that the Holy Father would make this trip and reach out the way that he is doing?
Well, we're very proud in Israel that we have a growing and thriving Christian community. And that's not something that should be taken for granted in the Middle East. Actually, today, the Christian population of Israel is about 5 times the size that it was in 1948. It's the one place in the Middle East where you actually have a growing and thriving Christian community. Unfortunately, some of our neighbors in Iraq, in Syria, and Egypt, Christian communities have been decimated by war, by intolerance, for many reasons. And so it's an opportunity to have the Pope see for himself this strong and vibrant Christian community. And we think it also will send a signal, we hope it will send a signal to Christians throughout the world, to Catholics throughout the world, to come and visit the Holy Land, to follow in the Pope's footsteps, so then they can follow in Jesus' footsteps in the Holy Land.
Yeah, and certainly this will get media coverage all over the world, so all of us will have a better view of how welcome Christians are in Israel. You work very closely with Prime Minister Netanyahu. What would he say about this? Can you speak for him?
Well, he would say exactly what I said now, that it's an opportunity to show the Pope the real Israel. And it's not always the Israel that you see on television. He'll get to actually see this vibrant community that we have. He'll see the religious freedom that we have in Israel. You know, the Holy Land has got a very, very checkered past. We're very proud of our record of protecting religious freedom. For us, protecting that freedom is a sacrosanct value. And I think he's going to see that Israel is an open, tolerant, free society with freedom of worship for all. And it gives us a real opportunity, I think, to embrace a Pope that is making waves around the world as a moral authority. And we're very happy that he can come to Israel and see the real Israel for himself.
Ambassador Dermer, thank you so much. We're honored to have you.
Thank you.
Well, some of the other stories our EWTN News Nightly team has been covering in today's world. Russian President Vladimir Putin says he will recognize the outcome of Ukraine's presidential vote this weekend, but he's also blaming the West for encouraging a coup in Eastern Europe. Putin spoke at an investment forum in St. Petersburg today, saying he wants peace and order restored to Russia's neighbor. Clashes between pro-Russian insurgents and Ukrainian forces have been ongoing this week as the eastern part of Ukraine, separatists have threatened to block Sunday's election.
I want to underline the fact that in the end, we also want the calming, de-escalation to have begun, and we will respect the choice of the Ukrainian people.
Ukrainian leaders say they hope the upcoming vote will be a step towards resolving the crisis in the region. 21 candidates are competing on Sunday to become Ukraine's next president. If no one wins the first round outright, a runoff will be held June 15th. A tense standoff between soldiers and protesters in Bangkok, Thailand today. At least 2 activists were detained by troops during a protest in the downtown area. This marks one of the first open challenges to the military since yesterday's coup in Thailand. Several hundred demonstrators denounced the takeover, which ousted the government and suspended the constitution. There were no injuries reported in connection with today's protest. Syrian tanks backed by massive air power rolled into the grounds of the prison in Aleppo today to take it back from rebels. Army leaders called the attack a serious blow for terrorist gangs looking to oust President Bashar al-Assad. The ongoing civil war has now been raging since March of 2011. It has left more than 100,000 dead. EWTN News Nightly has also learned that in a separate mortar attack today, 39 people have been killed and more than 200 injured. Those victims were attending an election campaign event packed with supporters of the Syrian president. That attack is heightening fears that rebels will escalate the fighting ahead of the balloting scheduled for June 3rd. Today, the United Nations Committee on Torture released its findings on the Vatican's handling of sex abuse. Earlier this month, that committee held a 2-day hearing, basically putting the Holy See on trial in Geneva. The committee discussed whether clergy abuse can be considered torture under international law and if the Holy See should be held liable for abuses committed outside Vatican City walls. Today, the UN is concluding the Holy See must comply with its anti-torture treaty. Here to talk more about this, Kathryn Jean Lopez of Catholic Voices USA. You've read this report. You've actually written about it already. What's your take?
Well, it's a great example of the importance, Brian, of showing up, because the Holy See did appear before the hearing, which was a little bit like some kind of show trial, was what some activists wanted to make it, where they were arguing not only that priestly sex abuse amounted to state-sponsored torture, and there are so many misunderstandings there, of course, not understanding canon law, but also the fact that Catholic Church teaching is inimical to everything that happened. Sexual abuse is evil, and the Church certainly doesn't advocate that. But it also misunderstands the Pope's authority in the local church around the corner as well. But what wound up happening, even though there were activists who wanted to accuse the Holy See of torture for that, and also for opposing abortion, saying that opposing abortion means psychological torture to women. That was overreach on their part.
In this report, were those things, was that push still there to change canon law, to change church teaching?
No, there were still misunderstandings about canon law. but which frankly is to only be is understandable. Lots of people don't understand, but all that most radical activist campaigns were not in the final report.
So it was not as bad as it could have been.
It was not as bad as it could have been. And actually the Holy See was able to tell the story of the reforms in the church in the last decade. And so it actually turned out to be a bit of a good story in the end, because the Holy See did show up and explain what we're doing. And the fact that the Catholic Church today is actually, in the United States, a Catholic school is one of the safest places for a kid to be, because we are so transparent and we are so concerned about protecting children. And the report that was released today even quoted Pope Francis saying that we can never do enough to protect children, and we're going to continue to work to make sure that they're safe.
And thank God for Catholic Voices USA. I know Ashley McGuire was there testifying. Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Brian.
We appreciate you, Jean. And here in Washington, President Barack Obama is nominating San Antonio Mayor Julian Castro as the nation's housing secretary. He is seen as a possible Democratic vice presidential nominee in 2016. Today's nomination is part of a broader shuffle of President Obama's cabinet. Well, some rough weather in parts of the U.S. this week. The Mid-Atlantic region, northeastern New York State, southern Ohio, and parts of Colorado are cleaning up tonight from severe storms. Powerful winds, heavy rain, flooding, and tornadoes hit some of those areas. In Delaware, high winds brought down trees and power lines, damaging at least a dozen homes and injuring 2 people. Storm damage in eastern New York State is being evaluated to see if it could have been caused by a tornado. In Ohio, transportation crews have started to clean up flooded highways that trap drivers in deep water. And no significant damage is reported tonight from tornadoes that touched down near Aurora, Colorado. That's suburban Denver. Flooding continues to be a problem in that area, though. Tennessee is bringing back the electric chair. Governor Bill Haslam signed a bill into law yesterday allowing the state to electrocute death row inmates if there's a shortage of lethal injection drugs. Now, those chemicals have become scarcer after a European-led boycott of drug sales for executions. The governor in Tennessee says he sees the electric chair as a backup plan. If you're on Facebook, expect to see a blue cartoon dinosaur popping up on your feeds. This is part of Facebook's new privacy checkup. The popular social media site's been criticized in the past for making it too easy to share personal information. Now Facebook is reminding users how widely they share posts and making the default to share just with friends. Democrats in the U.S. Senate say the Washington Redskins team name is racist and it should be changed. On Thursday, 49 senators, all Democrats with the exception of 2 independents, signed a letter and sent it to NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell. The letter reads in part, quote, "We urge you and the National Football League to send the same clear message as the NBA did, that racism and bigotry have no place in professional sports," end quote. The franchise has been known as the Redskins since 1933. The owner of the team, Daniel Snyder, has refused to change the name. He cites tradition. That letter refers to the NBA's decision to ban LA Clippers owner Donald Sterling for life for making racist remarks. Incidentally, Sterling has decided to pass on his stake in the Clippers to his wife. She will then reportedly move forward to sell the team. That arrangement was made after weeks of discussion. Coming up, Pope Francis is bringing a message of peace to the Holy Land, but he's walking into a political hotbed. Jason Calvi sets the stage for us tonight. And the Holy Father will be showered with presents this weekend. We'll show you what he may be adding to his growing gift collection. Thank you for joining us for our special coverage of the pilgrimage to the Holy Land by the Holy Father. I'm Brian Patrick. Pope Francis says his visit is strictly religious, but our faith does touch all aspects of life, including politics. Jason Calvi joins us now. Jason, what political tensions will the Pope find there this weekend?
Well, for one, there's the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but there's also Vatican-Israeli conflicts as well, Brian. The Pope's going to celebrate Mass at a place where Mass is usually not allowed, the Upper Room, the place of both Pentecost and the Last Supper. But Jews also revere the spot as the tomb of King David. Israel's controlled the site since 1948. The Vatican has repeatedly negotiated for more access. Now some Jewish people are worried.
This concert in Jerusalem is actually a protest. Some ultra-Orthodox Jews claim Israel will give the Vatican control of the upper room.
It's a new start for a new era for the next 1,000 years, that religions should come together. That's a great thing. But you cannot make a grab.
Israeli police say several people plan to disrupt the Pope's visit.
And this is part of a number of orders which were given out to 4 suspects, preventing them from making their way in and around the area of the Old City, both before as well as during the Pope's visit.
Over the years and in recent weeks, vandals have targeted Christian churches and monasteries with graffiti. Another possible diplomatic conflict: the Holy Father will meet Palestinian refugees. Some of the 190,000 have fought Israel. The UN says 17 refugees died and nearly 490 were injured last year. So will the Holy Father's visit to refugees harm Vatican-Israeli relations?
This Pope is uniquely blessed, it seems, with a message of peace and love and acceptance and reconciliation. So I can think of no one in the world better equipped to go there.
I think Israeli government officials are certainly aware of what the Pope needs to do. I think they also are aware that the Pope needs to speak to the Christian populations, and the largest Christian population is Palestinian.
Dale Hansen-Bork is the author of The Skeptic's Guide on the Israeli-Palestinian Conflict. The Pope walks into the Holy Land right after last month's failed Israeli-Palestinian peace talks.
There's really a lot of distrust between the two sides. And I think the Pope being able to go there and bring his particular wisdom and grace and peace to that situation, maybe is going to do something really that goes well beyond what diplomacy has been able to do.
So we shouldn't ever discount the real power of collective, focused prayer.
And Pope Francis says one of the reasons for the trip is to pray for peace. He's asking for all of us to pray for the trip. Israeli police say they'll take all necessary steps to keep the Pope safe during this trip. 8,000 police are being deployed throughout Jerusalem. Helicopters and 320 security cameras in the Old City will monitor the situation. Brian?
Well, let us pray for the Pope's safety and the success of his mission. Thank you, Jason. Well, both Israelis and Palestinians have been putting the finishing touches on gifts to give to the Holy Father this weekend. In the West Bank city of Bethlehem, Christian Palestinians have been making a special cross. It's filled with pieces of concrete chipped from the Israeli-built separation barrier that surrounds Bethlehem on 3 sides. Israel started building that wall 12 years ago in response to a wave of Palestinian suicide bombings. Palestinians call the barrier a land grab that divides neighborhoods and families and damages their economy. Nicola Ilias, a Palestinian painter, plans to present a drawing showing Pope Francis carrying a cross in front of the barrier. In Jerusalem, the Pope will receive a replica of artwork created by a Jewish boy who was just 14 years old when he died in the Auschwitz concentration camp. Our EWTN News Nightly team visited that wall around Bethlehem today, and they found some interesting graffiti on the wall that separates Bethlehem from Jerusalem. Some of it's political, but much of the art simply calls for peace. The graffiti attracts tourists from all over the world. One local artist told EWTN News Nightly he wants to send a message.
So we want to change something, and we are always asking for a peace, but we don't know where is the peace, really. We don't know where is the peace, and we don't know how to get the peace.
We hope and pray that Pope Francis' visit will succeed in promoting peace in that troubled region. Up next, a new group of men will be priests before this weekend is over. We have an ordination preview and preparing the graves of our fallen heroes for Memorial Day. We take you to Arlington National Cemetery. Tiernan Kane is a PhD candidate at the University of Notre Dame and the prospective president of the group Students for Child-Oriented Policy. He's joining us from South Bend. Tiernan, tell us about this group. Why did it form?
Hi there. Well, Students for Child-Oriented Policy was a group of students who thought, we looked out at the political arena and saw that there are a number of issues that seem to be moving forward in political debate without proper consideration for the way that those policies will affect children. We thought the drug legalization efforts in various states, the Common Core debate here in Indiana, questions about pornography use that's come up especially in Britain, and then most fundamentally here in Indiana, the question about marriage, which is so important to the flourishing of children. And we thought, hey, this is not an issue that is really being approached from the question of how do we serve children with marriage policy rather than considering how independent adults with resources can best be served by government policy under the name of marriage.
Okay, so you are there at the premier Catholic university in America, and your status or club status or request for it has been denied by the university. What reasons did they give?
Well, the troubling thing is there's a conflict of reasons, actually. The Student Activities Office has said that we are redundant, that our mission mirrors those of other social service organizations on campus. The student body that made the recommendation of our rejection has since said that they do not believe that redundancy is the dominant reason, or they will not give that as the reason for our denial. They actually offer no public reason for turning us down. The redundancy claim has unfortunately been met with silence when we've asked which clubs, especially social service clubs, have a public policy focus, a nonpartisan, non-sectarian focus on policy issues that affect children. So it's unclear actually why we've been turned down.
What do you think is the reason, and what do you think the Notre Dame administration should do? What action should they take on this?
Well, unfortunately, it's tough not to suspect that a petition on campus that called our activity essentially bigoted and to have a discriminatory focus, that hasn't influenced a non-transparent process of students deciding that we're not worthy of club recognition. This decision, I think, now will rest in the hands of administrators who can see that this is a faulty process. And I trust, and I think they should, grant us recognition to join the campus conversation about what policies best serve children. And I really do think that the university administration officials with whom this decision now rests will give us that consideration and open the discussion to our point of view.
And very quickly, is this just one group being denied at one university, or do you think there's a bigger picture here?
Unfortunately, it seems that the nationwide movement on campus to turn down speech, to drive certain perspectives out of the conversation has reached Notre Dame. I'm not sure that the university administration realizes how far it's come, but we are not immune from the wider nationwide culture of suppressing certain views on controversial issues, I'm afraid.
Right. Tiernan Kane, thank you for joining us from the campus of the University of Notre Dame in South Bend, Indiana. Well, there are going to be priests ordained all over the country, and two of the candidates joining the priestly class of 2014 are making history with their ordinations the next 2 weekends. Joseph Kirkconnell and Tristan Abbott will be the first Catholic priests from the Cayman Islands. Both priests say they are excited to join the priesthood. This Monday marks Memorial Day, a day set aside to remember the men and women who died while serving in the U.S. Armed Forces. We'll have a special EWTN News Nightly Memorial Weekend edition Monday evening. After our in-depth coverage of Pope Francis in the Holy Land, we speak with Archbishop Timothy Broglio of the Archdiocese for the Military Services USA, chopper pilot Amber Barno of Concerned Veterans for America, and retired former Secretary of Veterans Affairs Jim Nicholson. We hope you'll watch on Monday. Already tonight, preparations are underway for Memorial Day ceremonies. Soldiers from the Army's 3rd U.S. Infantry Regiment, also known as the Old Guard, place American flags on grave markers at Arlington National Cemetery. These soldiers say it's a way of honoring all those who have served and fallen in the line of duty. This unit's been doing this since 1948. Several dozen current and former members of the U.S. military recently found some peace and healing thanks to a pilgrimage to Lourdes. About 60 retired or active duty personnel, together with family and caregivers, went to last week's Warrior to Lourdes pilgrimage. The program is sponsored by the U.S. Archdiocese of Military Services. The Knights of Columbus cover the costs for the week-long trip. That's it until Monday. And until then, be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Catch us again on EWTN's YouTube page. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, I'm Brian Patrick. Have a good Memorial Day weekend. Good night, and God bless you.